Now that I'm a handful of years into my software engineering career here, there are several things that I kind of had to learn the hard way and that I didn't really understand when I first started coding. So this video is going to be about 5 different lessons I kind of had to learn the hard way, and I wish I would have known when I first started coding. So this is going to be a little bit different than a lot of my videos. It's just going to kind of be me sharing these lessons that I really would have liked to learn when I was first starting or even kind of earlier on in my career. So I hope these help you out. I know this video is probably not going to do as well in the good old like YouTube algorithm, but if you could and you like any of these things and it helps you out, if you could share, comment, let me know what you liked. Let me know any lessons that you learned the hard way. For one, I would just like to have that kind of connection with you guys in the comments below. And for 2, it definitely also helps the channel out as well. But the first thing, and this was definitely hard for me right when I was starting out, is you definitely learn by doing. And at least that is the case for me. And my general process for learning is much different now than when I started out. And when I started out, I almost thought that I just needed to kind of get through as much content as I could. Like there are so many tutorials and courses and stuff like that out there. And I'm, contributing to that. I'm also sharing content and doing that whole thing. And I think that when you first start out, you might think that the more kind of content you get through, the better. When in reality, I think it's more so the more that you do, the better. Because for me personally, like I really have to like struggle through problems for them to stick. Like I can hear how authentication works or how connecting to a database works in a podcast or in a video. But if I don't actually go and try to apply that knowledge, it's not really helpful for me and I don't actually pick it up. And my current process for learning things is I still like to watch videos, but I like to use, a few different modalities of learning. So for one, I do just like to go straight to the docs and read the docs. I know that's not for everybody, but for current up-to-date information, usually docs these days are pretty good. So I do like to go read the docs or at least about that topic that I want to learn. And then for 2, I do generally like to watch like a YouTube tutorial or a video just to kind of see how it all kind of fits together and just to kind of visually see how something works. And then the third part, which you definitely can't forget, is going and trying to build it yourself, getting your hands dirty, spinning up VS Code and doing a little bit of a demo project and try to build something interesting with it. Like that was another mistake that I made early on, is I would just try to build like all of the generic applications that were just kind of boring to me. But once I started building projects and applications that were aligned with my interests, that also made it easier to learn. So I would say for this first one, figure out how you learn best, but most likely it's not just by watching tutorial after tutorial and getting through as much content as you can. And I think it's more likely that you're going to learn best by actually doing and writing the code yourself. And I know it's hard. I totally get that. But everything's hard when you first start doing it. And you kind of have to start getting good at something to like actually doing something. And I think that once you are coding and you get more experience doing it, that over time you'll get better at it and you'll like it more and more. Now, the second thing is just along that point that I made. And that is that I don't enjoy doing anything that I suck at. And even to this day, I have to remember this, where like sometimes I'll get assigned a task that is, it might be on the back end or it might be more of an infrastructure task. So like setting up our testing environment to run in our like CI/CD stack. And, I personally just really like front end development, seeing my changes on the page, and that's what I'm comfortable with. But I also have to remember that I don't like doing anything that I suck at. And now that I've had more experience working across the entire stack, I actually enjoy doing some backend code and doing some infrastructure stuff. And like that is interesting to me as well. So I would say like if you're first starting out, you have to start getting good at something to actually start enjoying it. And I think that a lot of people probably never become a software engineer or kind of pursue this because, they start doing it for a few weeks and then they just don't like it and then they stop. And hey, I had those thoughts too. When I first started out, I remember myself watching a YouTube tutorial and just thinking to myself, pausing the tutorial and thinking in my head, like, I have no idea what they just said this entire video. Now, I was also dumb and tried to jump like right into more advanced topics, which is also a bad idea as a mistake, like learn the fundamentals and apply those generally, which is a point that I'll talk about later. But I had those experiences and I thought that like I just wasn't good at it and it made me want to quit. But luckily in the past, I've experienced with other things that I sucked at first, but started to enjoy once I got good at them. So like for one is lifting weights. I hated lifting weights at first, but once I started like learning the techniques, I started, improving my physique, building a little bit of muscle. I started really enjoying it. And same thing with martial arts. I was so bad at martial arts at first. And this was even after I was lifting weights and stuff like that. But now that I've been doing it for a few years here, it's become more and more enjoyable. And to this day, there's things I suck at, which makes me not like aspects of it. But generally, when you get better at something, you enjoy it. So if you're starting out, or even if you're into your career and you're having to do things that you're maybe less comfortable with, I think that by kind of gaining that experience, getting better at it, you might actually start enjoying and liking that thing. You just have to get time to get better at the skill. And then number 3 here, this is something that one of my engineers mentions really quite often at my day-to-day job. And this guy is great. He works remotely with us and he's like from a different country and he's got like a funny accent and he's just the coolest guy. But he always says like, I don't know how to do this right now, but there's a solution for everything. And that is so true. Like often you can get assigned a task and you might not know how to do that task. Like I've had several occasions where I'm assigned a ticket or a task to do. And I just think in my head, like, I don't even know where I'm going to start with this ticket. And it might be something that, I've had no experience with. Like, for example, I've had to set up like background processes that will run in the background and they will send an email to a user every 30 days if they haven't done something. And my engineering manager wanted me to set up what is called a cron job for that. And being someone that just knows like JavaScript and React, I had no idea where to even start with that. But I think often as you gain experience, you kind of learn that you get assigned these tasks, but you still find a solution for them. And I think that remembering like, hey, you might not know how to do something right now, but there is a solution for everything. And try not to get overwhelmed in the moment of it and try to keep that in mind because there always is a solution for everything. These days you have ChatGPT to help you out or Google or someone that's likely run into this situation before, and everything you can figure it out. And I think that's part of the skill of being a software engineer is understanding that you're not going to know everything and you kind of just have to keep learning as you go. And the solution is there. It just might take some time to find it, and getting overwhelmed about it and stressing yourself out about it definitely isn't going to help your cause. And then number 4 here is that there is no like best programming language, best database, best, just one framework. There are a ton of different tools out there, and all these tools, they have their use cases and they can work. And I think that when I was first starting out, I was like, okay, I would search things like, what's the best tech stack? And like, that's fundamentally not a good question because it depends. It depends on what your goal is. It depends on your different use cases, the problems you're trying to solve, and just a lot of other contexts that question doesn't include. And I think that for me, I was worried about, investing time and energy into learning a language because like that was really hard for me, learning a new language. I was worried about investing all that time into it and then not being able to like use that at my job or to be able to get a job using that language. When in reality, I don't think there's any, best language, best database, best, whatever tool. And I think that by just picking one tool that's, maybe it's fairly used, it's fairly popular, it's been around for a while, pick that tool, stick with it, learn it, and then you'll be able to apply what you learn with that tool to other tools. For example, I mentioned earlier that I'm learning more and more kind of back-end stuff. I still think of myself as a front-end focused engineer, but I work for a small startup, so I'm working all across the stack. And for me, learning our back-end tech stack, which right now it is Django, learning that helps me so much. Now when I go and I do tutorials with like Supabase databases or I work with MongoDB, because there are various just database principles that apply, like database indexes or database migrations or, querying a database, performing basic CRUD on a database. If you perform basic CRUD on a Django database using like Postgres or something like that, then performing basic CRUD with some other kind of framework or tool that is like a database, it's really going to be pretty dang similar. Also, developing your database tables, your schemas, you're going to be able to apply that knowledge to a bunch of other tools that you use. So getting too caught up in like learning one specific tool or one specific thing, I think is something that you just don't need to worry about, because right now I would say that I'm very comfortable with Next.js, React, JavaScript, and kind of that side of the tech stack. But hey, 5 years down the road, maybe Svelte just takes off. It takes all the market share, and maybe, hopefully after my startup does really well and sells and does all that stuff, then, if I ever move on from that, which, I have zero plans of doing right now, but if that were to ever happen and I change jobs down the future and they use Svelte, or hey, in my current job, let's say that we switched to Svelte because it had just taken over. Well, I know that with my fundamental understanding of how the web works, how CSS, HTML, JavaScript works, that I will be able to pick that up very quickly and it really won't be very difficult. And I think that understanding that prevents you from kind of getting caught in this, what I would say is a trap of I need to learn React and then I need to go learn Vue and then I need to learn, this kind of UI library and then this UI library. And I just think that learn one and you'll be able to generally apply the fundamentals, the core concepts to everything. And that's advice right there as well. Is I think it's a good idea to learn core concepts, core fundamentals, core principles, because the syntax, that's going to change over time. But the fundamentals of how the web works, what is a database index, what is a migration, what does it mean to query the DOM? Like, what does that even mean? Generally, it's a good principle to just ship less code to the browser. That principle applies to, any kind of language, any web framework, anything like that. Learning those principles, those aren't going to change, or at least there's far less likelihood that those principles are going to change. But, the syntax of React and JavaScript, stuff like that's probably going to change slowly over time. So I would focus on those principles and also understand that there's no best language, framework, database, and whatever you decide to use, try not to just hop back and forth, learn that very well, and then you'll be able to generally apply those concepts and principles to other things that you go and learn. And then the fifth and final thing here is that it's okay to write bugs, and it's okay to have errors in your code, and it's unavoidable. Like when I kind of first started out, we would do a round of testing with our team, and, maybe a bug would come up that, maybe it was something that I was responsible for. I would feel really bad about that, which in one hand, it's good. It means that you want to be a good software engineer and you want to do a good job. But on the other hand, now that I have a handful of years of experience and I've worked with people that have decades of experience, I realize that everybody writes bugs and it really is unavoidable. Now, over time, you do get better and better, and you don't make those like common new mistakes again. Like, one is in JavaScript trying to access a property that might be undefined on an object. Super common, something that I've done before. Now, over time, you can add null checks for that and different things like that to kind of work around that. But hey, when you start, you're going to write bugs. Even, when you're a handful of years in, decades of years in, you might write a bit less bugs, but mistakes are still going to happen. And to me, like almost half of software engineering is just getting good at debugging and working through issues. And, just because you write bugs doesn't mean that you're a bad programmer or that you're, incompetent or that you can't do this. Like, I write bugs to this day all the time. And so do a lot of the engineers I work with that have, tons of experience. And I think that for me, I really wish I understood this when I was first starting out because, not coming from a more traditional computer science background, it made me feel like, maybe I'm more incompetent because I write a few bugs here and there or something like that. And in reality, after working with a lot of people that do have a more traditional background, which there's also nothing absolutely wrong with that. But after working with those people, I realized that they also write bugs and it's just kind of part of the process. And I think that, generally speaking, getting good at, fixing bugs is a very important skill for software engineers. And for me, I think it's also important to really make sure that you read the error message that you get and fully understand the bug that you're getting, fully understand the problem that is going on, and then really try to fix the root of the issue. And it can be tempting to just do like a quick fix that, isn't necessarily the root of the issue, but it will kind of get you past the bug that you're currently seeing. That will always probably come back to kind of bite you in the long run. And I just think always just trying to fully understand the problem that you're having and where that problem is really stemming from and going to fix that, even if that takes a bit more work, is generally the best approach. Now, there is a bit of a balance there as well, in which, if the root of the issue is the entire architecture of your tech stack and it would require you 3 weeks to kind of rewrite that and you need to get this feature out, okay, Band-Aid solution for now is okay, but maybe you defer that root solution later, but you definitely shouldn't just ignore the root solution and sweep it under the rug and really try to understand what the problem is, what the error message is saying, and, not just ignore where the issue is actually coming from. So if I was first starting coding, those are 5 different lessons that I really wish I knew. And like I said, I would really appreciate you, continuing this conversation in the comments below. I'll definitely do my best to get back to you. So thanks for tuning into this. I know this is a bit different. Let me know how you liked kind of a video like this. I probably won't do too many of these just because I feel like I'd, be repeating myself quite a bit if I just went over these lessons again and again. But hopefully you enjoyed this. Let me know what you think of it, and I'll see you in that next one.